The Fog in Tower 15, written by Tobias D. and first published at Padawan. Did you know that over 1,600 people go missing in U.S. forests every year, never to be seen again? What if there's something out there, something ancient and hidden, waiting for those who stray too deep into the woods? When I took the job as a fire lookout in the summer of 1965, I thought it would be the perfect escape. A way to leave behind the relentless grind of my office job in Chicago. I worked at an insurance company and handled injury claims. I tumbled across the ad in a daily newspaper in the newspaper stand outside the office building. I filled out and sent an application by mail to the ranger post that handled the recruitment. I got a phone call from Mike that was head ranger, that held an interview by phone, and after an hour-long call, he told me that the job was mine. My post, Tower 9, was located in the heart of the deep woods in northern Washington. It was miles from the nearest town, in a stretch of forest that was so remote, even other towers were few and far between. Tower 9 was the farthest of them all. No cell service, obviously, no roads, and no other humans for miles. Mike picked me up at the last bus station stop and started the drive out to the tower. He explained the routines, and that restock of supplies was scheduled every second week, that I could radio in. It was anything special I wanted. The further into the forest we got, the more excited I started to feel. We drove the old Chevy pickup to the top of the hill where the tower was located. It had stairs going up to a platform, and from the platform you had to climb a ladder to reach the top. To get you things up, you had to load a basket and then climb up and haul it with a rope to the top. It was a long process of packing and climbing. It took me half a day to pack it all away, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. For the first few weeks, everything was peaceful. The days were filled with the sounds of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the occasional check-in over the radio with Tower 12, a post somewhere miles northeast of me. The ranger there was a guy named Roy, older and more experienced in these woods. We'd talk every few days, mostly about weather patterns, fire danger, and sometimes just to shoot the breeze. He warned me early on that the isolation could get to your head, that sometimes when you're out here for too long, the forest starts to play tricks on you. But then the nights came. The isolation that had been so peaceful during the day started to feel oppressive as soon as the sun dipped below the horizon. I had a feeling that the dark pushed its way closer every time. Tower 9 was high, with a panoramic view of the trees. An area around the tower was cleared so I could see the ground surrounding the tower. But it gave me no comfort, especially when the fog rolled in. I had been having a feeling of always being observed from someone hiding in the three lines. Of course, I never saw anyone or found any proof of it. When mentioning it to Roy, he laughed and said I was starting to feel the effects of the isolation. The fog started appearing in the third week. Heavy, thick, and unnatural. It would rise from the forest floor and cling to the trees like something alive. It was so thick that I couldn't see more than a few feet beyond the platform. And then I started hearing things. It began as faint noises, whispers carried on the wind, footsteps crunching on the underbrush far below. I remembered what Roy said and tried to ignore it, writing it off as the product of an overactive imagination and the eerie fog. The days were slow, so I looked at birds and read my books. But when I found the journal by accident, everything changed. The journal was old, hidden under a loose floorboard in the corner of the tower. I found it when I moved the bed to clean. It belonged to someone who had worked here before me, back in the 1940s. As I thumbed through the yellowed pages, my heart began to race. The entries began like mine, detailing the beauty of the wilderness, the solitude, the satisfaction of a job well done. But as the entries went on, the tone shifted. The author wrote about strange occurrences, lights in the distance, the thick fog, and most disturbingly, a figure in the woods. The previous lookout mentioned hearing voices just as I had. He described seeing a figure, tall, lanky, and always watching from just beyond the edge of the fog. The description matched exactly what I had glimpsed through the mist the night before. A shadow, tall and unnatural, watching from the tree line. I tried to radio Tower 12. Maybe Roy had seen something, or maybe he could calm my nerves. But when I tried calling out to him, another voice answered. It was calm, crackling with the static of old radio equipment. Tower 9, this is Tower 15. Tower 9. Be careful, it's watching you. Tower 15. I'd never heard of a Tower 15. I looked at the map where the other towers were and I could not find it. It felt a bit strange, but did not take any notice about it. I asked the usual questions about fire conditions, but the person on the other end just kept talking about the fog. It's getting thicker, the voice said, calm but unsettling. You should stay inside, it's better that way. Every time we spoke, the voice felt off. It had an odd tone, a distant, hollow quality that sent a shiver down my spine. I tried to ask more questions, but Tower 15 had gone silent. I asked Roy about Tower 15 the next day. Tower 15? He asked, sounding confused. I haven't heard anyone from there in years after the incident, but I guess if they're back up and running. He didn't seem to think much of it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I asked him what he meant, but the response was brief and unsettling. Tower 15 should be closed. That night I heard the footsteps again, louder this time. The fog was thick, rising up from the ground like a slow, creeping death. I tried to call out to Roy on the radio, but all I could hear was static. And then faintly I heard the voice again. This is Tower 15 who is out there? My blood ran cold. There was no Tower 15. There couldn't be. I spent the next few days in a state of heightened paranoia. The fog rolled in every night, thicker and more suffocating than before. And each night Tower 15 would call, talking about the fog, telling me it was watching me, that I wasn't alone. I looked out from the tower, scanning the ground below through the swirling fog. It was making its way up towards my tower. And then I saw it. A figure, tall and thin, standing at the base of the ladder, staring up at me. Its face was shadowed, but I could see it was wearing something. A hat, or maybe a hood. Slowly it began to climb. I grabbed my flashlight, shining it down, but the beam seemed to die in the fog, barely illuminating the steps. The thing kept climbing, slow and deliberate, never breaking eye contact. I slammed the trapdoor shut and locked it. How I managed to get the fridge out there and over the trapdoor that fast, I still don't know. I slammed the door behind me and put up the storm protection for the windows and locking my door. After that, I backed into the corner of the tower. My heart was pounding in my ears. I could hear the sound of something scraping against the metal ladder, and after that, the trapdoor. The thing was at the top trying to get in. I grabbed the journal, flipping through the pages in a panic, looking for something, anything that could tell me how the previous lookout survived. But the journal ended abruptly. The final page was smeared with ink, as if the author had been in the middle of writing when something happened. And then, after what seemed as an eternity, the scraping stopped. I didn't sleep that night. When dawn finally came, the fog had lifted, and the forest looked as calm and peaceful as ever. But I knew better. I radioed Roy, telling him what had happened. His voice was strained when he answered. "Pack your things and get out of there. They are warning for more fog tonight," he said. "You don't want to know what's really out there. No one does." I left Tower 9 that day. As I hiked back to civilization, rushing to reach the main road before dark, I felt eyes on me the entire way. It was as though the forest was watching, waiting, just like the thing that had climbed my tower. I never went back. In Tower 15, the next fire season, I heard they tore it down. But sometimes, during stormy late nights, I can hear the static sound and a voice whisper through the crackling on my radio in the kitchen, even if it's turned off. It keeps repeating itself. "This is Tower 15 who is out there?"